Scrutiny Committee focusing on the budget. I'll start off with a couple of quick apologies. I know yesterday there was a number of technical issues in here, and sadly they have got, they've got slightly worse in some ways and slightly better in others. So the left-hand half of the chamber isn't in use tonight, and we will do our best to make do with what we have, and hopefully it will see us through. And I believe there might be a manual controller for the camera again tonight, and I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job. I'll also apologise that we are in a non-accessible room, but because of last year, the number of people that came, we figured that the committee room 1 would not be big enough. And as we know, we don't have a room large enough that is disabled accessible. So we'll just make do in here today. That being said, we will start with the first item on the agenda, which is apologies. It looks like we have a full house, so I'm assuming there are no apologies. We'll move to item 2, the minutes. We have 2 minutes to go through. The first is from the 20th of November. Is everybody happy that we signed these as a true and accurate record of what then took place? Yep, no one's dissenting. Fantastic. The next one is the minutes for the meeting on the 11th of December, which I wasn't at. I'm sure you're all aware why, but thank you all for carrying on without me. Everyone happy to accept those as a true and accurate record? Fantastic. Everyone's happy. We will then move on to item 3, declarations of interest. Now, aside from the obvious joke of we're all interested, does anyone have an interest to declare? No? Fantastic. If anything becomes obvious during the meeting, please do put your hand up and make us aware of it, and Jonathan will record it as appropriate. Item 4, public participation. There is no public participation. Item 5, questions from councillors. No questions have been received at this point. So we'll move on to item 6, which is the budget and medium-term financial plan strategy report, the MTFP. So the running order for this is Sean Creamer will start off with a brief introduction on it. I will then invite the cabinet member if they wish to speak to it if they want to, but they don't have to if they don't wish to. We will then move to a very short set of slides which have been prepared just in case they will be relevant to questions we're asking later on with it, to go through quickly. We will then have questions from non-committee members. I can see we have, excluding cabinet, we have 2 non-committee members here, so it'll be their chance to ask questions at that point. We will then move to going through questions as overarching questions from the members, and then we will go to each line by line of the pressures and savings and question those and interrogate those as necessary, hopefully moving to a really good, happy, balanced budget outcome we can recommend to cabinet. I believe that's the goal. I'd also like to say that it's been really nice this year. I always ask for certain bits of extra information to help us conduct these meetings, and Sean has been an absolute pleasure to work with and given all the information as needed and collated it really easily and really well, which is very nice. And I think it should be noted, and our thanks go to Sean and obviously his whole team that have worked on that. And also to be very clear that while we are interrogating and questioning lines in the budget, at no point is it an attack on any officers whatsoever. It's questions looking at what went wrong or what went well, what we're learning from it, and it's looking at the process, not individuals. So please don't take anything I say as a personal attack, is basically what I'm saying. Otherwise, with no further ado, I'll move over. Sean, come on in, buddy.
Thanks, everybody. So good evening. I'm Sean Creamer, the Corporate Director for Finance and Commercial and Acting Section 151 Officer, which gives me the responsibility to present the budget to scrutiny this evening. So the report sets out Dorset Council's proposed revenue and capital budget for 26-27, and then the medium-term financial plan covering the next few years up to 2030-31. 26-27, the council is proposing a net revenue budget of 482.6 million, which is an increase of 18.9 compared to the current 25-6 financial year. A lot of the increases are being driven through adult social care, housing and children's, which together account for the majority of the growth both in year and next year. And some of which isn't necessarily in the scope of this committee, but obviously sets the context and operating environment in which we're setting a budget and a number of these services are responding to. So those underlying cost pressures within the budget gap are around 37 million, again, driven by rising demand, inflation, workforce costs, and then demographic changes that we're seeing. These pressures are then addressed through a combination of savings, efficiencies, grants, and income. and then also 18.9 million of additional funding, the vast majority of which is from council tax. Members will see through the report that Dorset's position reflects the wider change in local government funding. So in terms of we're seeing these trends affect us as well. Whilst the government have announced a multi-year settlement, which is the first time in a decade we've had some degree of certainty over more than one financial year, it also brings a significant amount of structural change to how councils across the country are funded and where funding is focused. Grant funding reduces for Dorset over the medium term, and you can see that the bakes in our reliance on council tax, with the report outlining that core spending power increases for 26-27, but 93% of that is driven by council tax rather than government grants. The report also highlights some of the significant risks, so in particular around the medium term, that demand for services, which again, slightly outside the scope of this committee, but particularly the social care services, uncertainty around inflation, and then the exposure to the dedicated schools grant deficit pose significant risks, particularly as we move closer to the extended statutory override of 2028. So that remains challenging, and we remain focused on working on that and look forward to the government announcements on that topic in due course. Against this backdrop, the budget presented tonight is one which is balanced. It doesn't rely on one-off funding to support expenditure, and it's underpinned by clear principles around prioritising statutory services, protecting vulnerable service users and communities where possible, and then also delivering transformation as part of at the heart of that. So the proposals will be taken forward through to Cabinet and then on to full council. Obviously, be subject to scrutiny, such as right here and now, and Cabinet will be asked to respond to the recommendations from this meeting as well. So that's where I'll pause the introduction. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sean. I'll hand over to Simon Clifford. Would you like to say anything?
So Councillor Simon Clifford, Cabinet Member for Finance. So just a couple of points from me. Sean's unable to use politics in this chamber. I will do that for him. So it's very disappointing that we're starting from a position where the government haven't reflected Dorset's issues, such as an ageing population, its rurality, transport. This council as a whole, across all parties, has been united in calling for fair funding, and we still haven't got it. Having said that, what we have got is a settlement over multiple years, which is a first for over a decade, and actually is something that is very welcome. It gives us surety that although we're not getting much, at least we know how little we're getting for the coming years. So it does enable us to start to plan more for the future. And I think this is, because of that, this is the last year we will have a single year budget that's produced up to the last minute. And I'd like to thank the chair of both scrutiny committees for allowing the dates to be changed in order to give our finance team a couple more days to pull together what is a very complicated budget. So my gratitude for that. I'd like to thank the finance team who've done a huge amount of work in a very short time in order to come to where we are. And as the chair has already reflected, I think the papers are clearer. They're certainly a lot shorter and fewer of them. And I look forward to taking any questions as we go through. But I suspect in the main, it'll be the finance officer who will be fielding it.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. We will. Any questions that are more strategic and political decision based, obviously we'll go for allow the cabinet member to respond to, but any detail questions will be to the appropriate officer to respond to, will be the plan. Yeah, mate, you wish to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm Councillor Ray Bryan, representing the ward of St Bernard's and St Ives. Quick question, for the benefit of the public, because it's something we probably all face. They look at the amount of tax that we collect. Is it possible to explain to the public, council tax they understand, but they think we get all the business rates as well? Is it possible just to explain what happens to business rates? Thank you.
I think to add to that, it might be good as a bit of an overview of the change in business rates that hasn't really changed much in business rates would be useful. That's good, Sean.
Yeah, we can do. So in terms of business rates, so firstly, we retain about 50% of business rates locally. So the council officers issue the bills on behalf of government, working closely with the Valuation Office Agency. So it's a Valuation Office Agency who set the rateable values and do those assessments, provide the councils with the rating list, and the council issue the bills and collect the bills. And 49% of that is retained by councils, and the rest goes back to government. The budget papers outline there's a number of significant changes to business rates, both in terms of how they're calculated for businesses that occupy the properties and are responsible for the payments, and then also in terms of how councils are funded in terms of business rates. So what's effectively happened is what's called like a business rates reset, where they kind of go back to a historic funding level and remove some of the growth that we've seen over the last I think go back to that 2013 level. So we've seen the business rates reset back a number of years, which is why business rate funding for Dorset councils reduced by about 15% from last year to this year. And a lot of that is kind of rolled up and rolled into the new revenue support grant. So in previous years, Dorset Council received a revenue support grant of 1.8 million. For this coming financial year, 26-27, it's 60.8 million, which on the face of it sounds like Dorset's going to receive loads of new money. But what it actually is it's lots of previous funding streams rolled up into a single funding stream going forwards. So that's kind of a little bit on how much would we retain, why it's changed between years, and then how it may look going forwards as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sean. That's great. Now, would you happy to go through the slides I asked you to prepare and talk through those very briefly? Thank you.
So on screen there is now a slide deck which talks through a few what called key lines of inquiry. So ahead of the Scrutiny Committee, and these were 3 topics which were requested to talk through. So the first one was around a review of the 25-26 savings and the consideration of how these translate into 26-27 budget proposals, in particular looking at where something that was proposed in 25-26 perhaps hasn't been achieved or hasn't been achieved yet, and whether or not the council is effectively doubling down on that saving for future years. You wish to scrutinise that. There's a second piece around 3-year trends on budget setting, looking at what was the budget that we set, what was the budget by the end of the year, what did we end up spending on that service, and again, how's that changed? And then the last one was around reserve movements over 3 years. So we've got some analytics coming up. So in terms of the savings, so what we've got on screen here, and apologies that the titles slipped off, but this is the corporate services savings. So on screen you can see a breakdown of what was £5.4 million worth of savings put forward within the corporate directorate. The ones highlighted in red are ones which are forecast as part of the cost pressures for as at Q3. So one of them relates to the share of our future council savings, which had been allocated to services. One of them is around vacancy management, and some of the others relate to savings which didn't go forwards, or some things which have been delayed until we have the new ERP system in place. Then got the same slide for the Place Directorate. So that shows £8.9 million worth of savings which were put forwards. And as at Q3, the Place Directorate is forecast to underspend by just over £5 million, which is part of the Cabinet papers for next week. So then looking for which of those have then rolled forwards into budget setting for 26-27. So on screen now, the table on the left shows where we've effectively got an unachieved saving, which is being rebased as part of setting the 26-27 budget. So for the council overall, that's £7.9 million worth of that pressure. What the right side then goes through some of those. So talks through that whilst that 7.9 million being rebased, savings get rebased for a number of reasons. Perhaps the initial idea can no longer be progressed. Perhaps situations have changed. Perhaps decisions have been made. So they're not all necessarily what might be described as a failing. It might be a change in circumstances. For the ones in corporate, so I just use my laser pointer. Corporate is £100,000. Those savings are not assumed to take place in next financial year. So they've been kind of rebased to be deferred for future years, and we revisited once we have a new ERP system. Within central, there's 3.6 million, which effectively is and reducing down the OFC saving expectation, which was budgeted to be 10 million and then was set as 6.4 million for the coming year, and has been increased slightly as we've gone through the budget setting process. So in terms of that unachieved savings which roll forward, corporate there are none, but within the central services, OFC is forecast to assume £7.4 million worth of delivery for the coming financial year. I'll keep going through all the slides and do questions at the end here. In terms of then the 3-year movements, what we've then got on screen here is the 24-25 budget position. So the original budget that was approved in February, the current budget, which moves during the year based on new grants coming forwards, service restructures, etc., and then the actual spend, what the budget was for 25-26, same analysis, and then the budget for 26-27. So you can see how the budgets kind of ebb and flow and take into account the forecast position as we set the budget for the future years. We've then got a detailed breakdown of that by the services that sit underneath the directorates, and if people want to go into that, we can revisit that one. And then the last one was around reserves. So the question was around how's our reserves position changed over the years. So you can see kind of as at March 2024, total reserves available to the council is just under 160 million. And then that kind of changes, drops to 145 as at the end of March 2025. March 26, it's around 144 million, and then lowering to 116 is the forecast reserve position by the end of the coming financial year. And what the slide outlines is that typically where we've seen those big reductions in reserves, and quite a lot of them are powered through this one here called unused grant funds, which you can see reduces from 36 million to 18.79 million by the end of that. So typically, as you would expect, an unused grant effectively is a grant we received, didn't use it by the 31st of March and carried it forward to the following year. So where that's being reduced, it's because we've used the grant for the reason it was earmarked. So that's not necessarily something which would be of concern, and that accounts for a lot of the reductions that we're seeing. A key risk that's highlighted in the MTFP paper in the context of reserves is our DSG deficit. So the DSG deficit as at the end of this financial year is forecast to be about 150 million. So that is a significant deficit to be offset against the level of reserves. So in the event that the kind of promised national solutions don't come forwards, our current total reserve position is a risk when considered against that DSG position. But the government continue to make positive noises about what might happen around the DSG, and we expect to know more in a few weeks' time. That's the 3 topics that were.
Fantastic, Sean. Thank you so much. I think it's worth saying that the situation with DSG making us almost negative, if that was to come, is not one that's solely for our council. That is nationwide and would affect many councils. And so, while it's a notable risk that we need to be aware of, actually, I think is one of the most unlikely risks to come to fruition. I think that'll be fair to say. So I'll start with non-committee members. Is there anything you wish to drill down upon or ask about within those slides that we've just had? No? Happy? Anything from those slides? Brilliant. So I'll move straight to committee members. So for this, I asked for the savings that were not realised, the saving targets that weren't realised, and then the same areas that have savings applicable to them this year. Because our goal is to be able to give assurance that we believe this is a balanced set budget. And obviously, it's only a balanced budget if the savings are achievable that are within it. Yeah, that's part of the core. We're not necessarily here to scrutinise if we agree with the savings. We're here to agree, are they realistic savings? And I thought to do that would be useful to see what's going on. So we can start off with questions on those savings that weren't materialised this year and are in again next year. Has anyone got any questions on that? Or should I start us off? I'll start us off. So I'll go straight for the elephant in the room. Our future council was set to save 10 million. It failed to save, it got to a third of it, I think, of that savings target. I think is correct. Remind me, so cabinet member for OFC would be, oh, Ben, fantastic. Yeah, so Ben, so just so I know I'm speaking to. Thank you. Sorry, Ben, I did know that. Obviously, this year, it completely failed to achieve the savings it was going to. But we think it will make the savings next year, and in fact increasing them over to make up for the £6.5 that wasn't saved, £6.5 million that wasn't saved this year, plus another about £1 million you think you will save. Can you talk us through what went wrong this year that you think you'll rectify for next year?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ben Wilson, South East Purbeck Ward, portfolio holder for transformation. But first, just so that the numbers are out there, our projected savings for this year are 6.7 million of that 10 million. So you are correct that we're not hitting our 10 million target, but the projected savings for our future council is 6.7 million.
Is that number in here? Because that wasn't the number that we saw. We saw it as 3.4-ish. It was around that number that was in the budget numbers we're working on here.
So if I can clarify, so the savings for 25-26 are 10 million in the budget. What's being so what you're seeing on that slide is the non-achieved saving. So the 3.6 million is saying that's how much is forecast to not occur next year. So you go from a starting £10 million budget, reduce it by £6.4 million reduce the £10 million by 3.6, which leaves you a residual saving target of 6.4, which rolls into next financial year, which, as you say, has then been increased by 1 million to get to a 26-27 savings target of 7.4.
Fantastic. That's a very different story from when it came to scrutiny last. It's almost doubled the savings from then, from my understanding. So that's good. Now, I'm seeing shaking heads, but it was 3.4 at scrutiny because it was about a 40% success rate on it. But either way, carry on with the rest of your answers. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's consistent with scrutiny and what we reported. But the first point I want to make very clear is when we set up our future council, it was set up as a multi-year transformation programme. We always knew that transforming the inner operations of this council was not a one-year job. We made a conscious decision in that not to do a pure savings slash and burn programme, which some councils do. You just take cost out as quickly as possible. We took a conscious decision that we need to create a sustained new council operations organisation, and that was going to take time. That doesn't change the core facts of the savings numbers, but it's very important to note in the context of what we're trying to do. I accept that our future council in 25-26 has progressed at a slower pace than was first projected this time last year. The decision to do that has been deliberate. It's been deliberate because we understood, having listened to our employees and having listened to the unions, that we needed to change approach when it came to workforce changes. And that has impacted the pace of change. And as a result, it has impacted our ability to deliver the savings this year. One thing that we all need to appreciate is savings that we have delivered this year do get rolled over into next year. So that slower pace of change and the fact that we were due to make workforce changes in September, October per our original plan, and those changes have now happened in January, means that we get the full year benefit of those savings next year. Those savings are in place. And therefore, that is why those savings can be rolled over into the future year. On top of that, we are continuing on our transformation journey. And as we transform, and again, one of the deliberate decisions we made was, with a slower pace of change, to couple workforce change with technology change. And the impact of that is that it actually, when you make the changes, it accelerates the change because you are seeing more efficiencies come through the use of technology. That's the approach we're now adopted, and we're actually seeing that come forward in our customer function. And one of the main achievements of our future council this year is to have set up our customer hub. It is now in place. We're now moving forward with the technology. And as we accelerate that technology journey, we will see further efficiencies and we will see further changes. And so when we're talking about incremental savings going into next year, that's part of what we're seeing. What we've also done this year, which is important, is set up a transformation office, a central transformation office for Dorset Council that did not exist in the past and couldn't have existed under the previous structures. That again is an accelerator. That has been in place since the 1st of December. So we've seen less than 2 months worth from that, but we now have it in place for the full year next year. Another reason why savings are far more secure going into next year. And then a further element to our savings this year going into next year has actually been nothing to do with workforce. It's actually been to do with our commissioning and procurement. We set up a commercial board this year, and we've worked with third parties to identify where we can make savings, and that work is ongoing. So again, we expect to see incremental savings come through that work next year. So I hope that brings some clarity into why the savings may have been slower this year, and we accept that, but they have set us up and put us in an incredibly strong position to move that forward into next year and make the savings that are projected.
Thank you for a really full and clear explanation. I think that's really useful. It definitely gives me a level of reassurance I didn't have because I failed to see the benefit from it so far. And so it's nice to know that might be coming next year. And we're planning on it coming. Were there any other questions on OFC as a whole from that part? No, fantastic. I think that's the main one that appears in the first slide that I'm seeing there. Has anyone else got any questions on the more detailed slides with the savings that were down there? I'm not seeing anyone jumping up to ask. Okay, we can always bounce back if this is something that comes up later. But would you guys, I'm guessing from the look of lack of questions, we'd like to move on to the pressures. And yeah, I'm getting nods for moving on to the pressures. Absolutely fantastic. So we will move straight then on to, let me get back up on the computer. I believe it starts on page 42. Again, it starts with adults on housing, and a lot of that we're not really looking at today. We don't want to go over yesterday's, but obviously there are place and resources within those budgets as well. So there are some things in there which if people wish to have questions on, they are welcome to. So we'll start on that. Budget pressures are on page 42 for adults and services. Anyone got any questions on that? No? Fantastic. So then we can look at the proposed savings. This is nice and easy. I was hoping we won't have to go over too many more of these that went over yesterday. No, all fine. So we have to children's services and their predicted budgets. Any questions on that? No, awesome. Because obviously the actual transport costs will come out later in the place budgets. We then have the savings that they've put on there for next year. If there's no questions, I'll jump in with one on outdoor education services, because obviously that's going to come under place generally rather than housing, because obviously those are real outdoor education centres. There's going to be savings of 122,000. Is there any detail on that at all?
Chair, as part of the children's services budget, I'm not sure we have anybody in the chamber who can give you a detailed answer to that, because it isn't within the place directorate budget as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I did ask for children's to be here because of the questions on it, because obviously when it comes to place and resources, that does actually cut through to quite a lot of things that are more affected in those budgets. And with the outdoor education services are quite often in areas that we control and have stuff for. So if they're not here, they can't answer it. Louis, Councillor Louis.
Thank you very much. It's something I was going to bring up later on, but it's in similar vein. Is page 76, it allocates £4.2 million of savings through various initiatives to reduce the spend on children in care, primarily to reduce the number of children in care And then the detail is we are working with our external partner on our transformation program to manage children in care need and reduce the overall costs. We are focused on ensuring children in the right homes for them. I have no idea what any of that means. It's a big saving of 4.2 million. I can't tell if any of it covers place or not. And like I said, it would have been handy to have someone from children here to answer that, because 4.2 million is a big bit to budget. And quite frankly, that entire line on page 76 is just gumph. I mean, what does that even mean? It's just sort of words on a piece of paper with no actual meaning or information or background.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Leary. Sean Craig, agreement. Do you want to answer that?
Can you say, so I pick up the outdoor education one as well. So it's relating to income generation. So it's across the council, we're looking to where we offer discretionary services or services that generate some kind of fees and charges to move to a more commercial operating model. So what that recognises is that the outdoor education service has a level of demand for people to come and use it. So I'm not close enough to the detail, but I believe schools come and do residential trips at places like this, and they come spend a couple of days doing it. You know, people remember when they're coming of age type stuff you did when you're leaving primary school or early secondary school, that those type of services are being provided, and obviously there's a charge to the users of it. So they're looking at refining the commerciality of that model and looking to generate an additional income to offset the running costs of that service. And in terms of the savings on the 4.2 million of savings, so it was covered more extensively last night in terms of the savings. So the 4.2 million pounds is a big number. So the savings within the pressures and savings within children's, adults and housing are typically driven by demand modelling. So we're looking at at its most simple, how many children are going to be supported in that service, at what cost, and for how long. So a lot of the pressures that come through are looking at how many effectively more children are we going to look after, or how more children, families and young people are we going to be supporting, and how might the inflationary cost pressures go into that. That's what drives the pressure. And then what's driving the savings, that 4.2 million pounds, is effectively then saying, well, what's the prevention work that can be done? What's the early engagement work that can be done to effectively reduce the number of children and young people that are reliant on those services, reduce the length of the engagement, or reduce commerciality to reduce the costs and kind of effectively reduce some of those high cost external placements. So that 4.2 million pounds predominantly relates to third party spend, so effectively placement spend for children, looking to reduce that. And the work that's being done is with a company called Empower, who support a number of councils in looking to map children's needs against placements, and then trying to understand where are their better fits, more optimum fits, and what's the work that can be done to manage those needs, again, more effectively, shorter term interventions, and ultimately allow children and young people to spend more time in their communities or home-based family settings wherever possible. So that's why it's a big number, and why it's a fairly high level description, because it probably comes under its demand modelling that's assessing that number.
Thank you, Sean. I think actually that demand modelling is what we use over almost the entire council for everything, because we hear all the time that children now to demand-based services, unlike potholes, roads, verges, recycling, and everything else, it's all demand-led services. So I think that part is slightly different. The education, the outdoor education that we're looking to be more commercial. Are we setting up a company or anything? What sort of is the changes that we're going to be doing there to be more commercial with it? Because it's quite a bit of increased income. What's the rationale behind that?
I'd need to probably follow up in writing in terms of the specific details. I'm not close enough to it. It's £100,000 saving and a £1.2 billion gross budget, so I'm not close enough to the detail. What I believe it's to do with is around looking at the fees and charges structure within that service, so changing them. So I wouldn't want to make up numbers that will then get quoted back to me, but I believe it's around looking at the more commercial offer. And there's been discussions in the past around the kind of accommodation on site, and if you make subtle tweaks to it, you can then take a different size group, or you can take groups for longer, depending on how the kind of accommodation is arranged. Allows you to be a bit more commercially savvy in terms of how you set the prices or the types of groups and trips that you can accommodate. So as you would do if you were running it as a business, you'd be looking at kind of how you can reduce the overheads associated with it, drive income, and perhaps attract a slightly different client group in order to provide a sustainable business model going forwards. But it's not looking to be set up as a local authority trading company or some kind of arm's length spin out like that. It's within the council's control.
Fantastic, thank you. So we'll stick on the children's directorate at the moment. Are there any other questions on the? Oh, sorry. Go for it, Jonathan.
Chairman, Jonathan Mayer, monitoring officer. I just wanted to make the point that we've got the two reports that mirror each other that come to your committee and to the People and Health Scrutiny Committee. And we've said in the People and Health Committee yesterday that in the context of the budget, the role of People and Health Scrutiny was to review the proposals in relation to adults and housing, children's services, birth to settled adulthood, and public protection and health. So I think there's a danger that you're going to, this committee is going to slip into the business of that other committee, which is already met.
Thank you, Jonathan. So the way we've had it said, and I said the same last year, you sent us all the papers and asked us to get a recommendation on all of the budget. You haven't asked us to only give a recommendation on particular directorates. If that was the case, that's what we would do. And there's a lot of overlap between the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee and some stuff that affects and is included in budgets that are held by other parts of the council, including children's and adults. We don't want to go through a lot of what was there yesterday. I did listen to the entire thing yesterday as well. And so I will be trying to stay away from any questions that are just doubling up from it. And as I had the same conversation with you last year, and you didn't say anything to me afterwards about it changing that way. So we're keeping on we go. Please do go ahead, Jonathan.
Kevin, if I can say that Councillor O'Leary's question is an example, though, one which was very firmly in the area of the People and Health Scrutiny Committee. So I think we've just got to be careful not to intrude into their business.
And to be clear, Jonathan, I agree with you, and I would agree generally, but on the paperwork, it doesn't say what that 4.2 million was, and that 4.2 million could have been buying a whole new set of things to enable that, which would have come under our resources. And once we've realised that wasn't the case, you're right, it's no longer relevant to our committee, but we didn't know that from the paperwork. The question had to be asked. If it would said on there what it was, then it would have, and that's the way it is. So the next one is opening a new children's home. We have on there, which obviously just a very simple question. The savings that are said from that, which is just over a region of £500,000, is that inclusive of all of the on costs that will then be passed on to the other areas within the council that aren't part of children's services when it comes to property management and everything?
So the saving is based on the business model that's come forward, which looks at the total cost of ownership, and so staff costs, building costs, and then also, like I referenced, the demand modelling that's associated there, and the price. The bulk of the saving comes from the price differential and the influence in the market that's achieved, again predominantly around that children's focused.
But the knock-on additional costs that always happen from having a new piece of property, it is inclusive of those. They're not elsewhere, another budget going up for this one to go down. That was the question I was looking at.
So the business plan covers the total cost of ownership of the site and the total cost of operations for the unit as well.
Fantastic, thank you so much. I couldn't see anything else that would be ours on children's that comes to us at all. No one said that. Fantastic. Birth settled adulthood. I couldn't see anything in there that's going to affect Place and Resources. Cool. No one is saying otherwise. So then we can start on, I guess, page 78, please. Summary of movements, pressures and savings. Be happy to start there. So the first one, I guess, would come up, unless someone's got to jump in with questions, please do. No, that would be fees and charges income at 2.5 million, an accounts-wide uplift in fees of charges. Who would like to speak to that? I believe that's a 5% average, is that correct? Jan, do you want to speak to how you got to that number?
The income figure there is, of course, across the whole of the police directorate, and we earn fees and charges income in a number of different places within the directorate. The largest area of fee and charge income is car parking. So an overall 5% increase is a fair stretch, and does put a certain amount of pressure on the budget for next year. Not unachievable, but certainly challenging. I'd be happy to answer any more detailed questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor O'Leary, I'll let you go in first on that.
Yes, thank you very much. You mentioned a 5% increase in fees and charges. On a press release that went out last week, it said that we were freezing car parking charges. Can you clarify what the position is on car parking charges? Are we freezing car parking charges in certain car parks, or are all car parks going to be frozen?
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor John Andrews, Cabinet Member for Police Services. Freezing car parking charges was a deliberate choice to support the residents and businesses while the complete parking review was taking place. We're waiting for the full results of that review, which, thanks to new machines and far better data from Parking App, we will get the clearest picture of how our car parks are used. Other income streams are still increasing where appropriate. Parking permits will rise in line with inflation, and penalty charge notice fees are set nationally. Those national fees are currently being reviewed after a trial at BCP last year, which appears to have been successful in deterring unlawful parking. We expect the detailed results soon.
I think that was a good example of, I think, when we wanted the detail answer as opposed to the kind of the strategy there. Because I think, oh yeah, Councillor, I'll let you re-ask your question again.
Yeah, well read, John. I'll give you a Jill on that. Well done. But the question I want to know is, which is it going to be all car parks that are frozen, or two car parks that are frozen, like the ones that are currently on review? Is it just all car parks frozen for all year, or is it two? What's the situation with?
Yeah, it's all car parks, or off-street car parks.
Thank you. So I'm just going to come back there. So you're going to increase, you're going to get an additional £2.5 million in through increasing council-wide uplifted fees and charges, and parking's not part of that because that's being frozen. So where does that £2.5 million, what's gone up quite a lot to increase a £2.5 million in uplift on fees and charges, because it's on fees and charges that it's labelled on here?
Yes, Chair, the increase in fees and charges does include an increased income target for car parking. But as the Cabinet Member has said, there is to be no increase in the charge. So we're hoping for good weather.
So obviously, I'm assuming hoping for good weather is a joke, because we wouldn't base a budget on that. But I'm just being really clear here. Sorry, this is my Asperger's brain being the way I am. It says very clearly, £2.5 million from the impact of council-wide uplift in fees and charges. So we have an impact of uplifting charges will create £2.5 million. What are those fees and charges that are going up to create that, please, Jan?
It will be all of the fees and charges levied across the Police Directorate, save those relating to car parking.
Super. So how much are they going up?
Include all of the other fees and charges that are levied across the Police Directorate.
Is it possible to have some detail on that separately after the meeting, a list of what the charges are going up by? Because actually, to save 2.6, to increase 2.5 and a bit million is quite a lot on some fairly low charges. And I think having sight of what that list is and how much they're going up would be really useful. You happy with that? Super.
Sean wants.
Oh, sure. You want to respond to that question? Yeah.
Just to clarify, if I may, so the the cabinet papers that were published yesterday, so have about 11 appendices attached to them. One of them is a list of all the fees and charges that are proposed for 26-27. So that information is available. So we can send you a link to it.
I'm very disappointed they're available for that, but weren't available for this. I think actually it would have been nice to have those available for this because I think when we received it, everyone saw it and went, 2.5 million makes sense. They're putting up car parking. And then to take that out, it's quite difficult to reconcile in your head 2.5 million extra without any evidence for where that's come from. So I'm disappointed that it wasn't the case. And I'm sure they will send the information I've requested. Councillor May, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Probably an awkward question at this stage. And sorry, Jan, it's coming at you. 2.5 million on a very much reduced number because you've taken car parking out of that calculation. What sort of percentage on the income is the 2.5 million? If you need to come back to me on it, I'm perfectly happy for you to come back to me. But it looks to be a very large number on a very small number, considering you're taking, what, nearly 12 million out of your income before you do this.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Bryan. I can't do the maths in my head. About 5% of the total income target on the reduced base once you've taken out car parking. So you're going to have to give me the chance to come back to you after the meeting with that detail, unless Mr. Kramer is much quicker at mental maths than I am.
I can get you the number in about 5 minutes because we've got it from some workings out. So I just need a colleague to pull that paper up, and so if we come back to it in about 5 minutes, is that okay?
That's even better than coming later. Thank you so much. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm pleased that car parking charges are being frozen. Obviously, that isn't the same as a cut or reversal as promised, but it's a political point. While you said off-street car parks are to be frozen, will on-street car parking charges be increased by 5%? And will the residents' parking and visitors' parking permits also be increased?
Yeah, the on-street parking will stay the same, and the residents' parking permits will go up by inflation. That's still a really good deal, though, for residents.
Is that national inflation or our version of what we think inflation is? Because they do change quite regularly.
I think it was set at 3.4%, but okay.
Super, thank you. Oh, Craig's been answered. I don't want to monopolise. Anyone else want to ask questions on the car? Yes, Alex, go for it.
Thank you. Councillor Brenton, Litchett and Upton. Taking the conversation away from car parking, I do not have a car park in my ward that anybody has to pay for. So that's sort of irrelevant to me. But I am interested in there's 2 points here, which I assume would probably be John Andrews' department. Cost of dealing with the persistent organic pollutants. This is legislation that is do we know that that's what it's going to cost, that's what we're going to have to pay for from the contractor? What's the flexibility in that? Does it depend on how much waste comes into the HRCs? And it would just be nice to have a bit of an explanation rather than worry about the precise figure. And additional disposal costs due to expected green waste tonnage. Is this the cost of our disposing of it or the cost of extra coming in? What is the variation between? I know we pay certain contractors to shred and compost it, but bearing in mind they then sell it on again, it seems to me a little bit, I've always wondered why you can be paid to take waste and then be able to sell it without us getting any sort of bonus on it. A little bit of explanation would help.
Fantastic, thank you. John, do you want to go in on that?
I'll come out of that. The cost of dealing with POPs, which is persistent organic pollutants, and the waste at the HRCs is £106,000. All soft furnaces need to be stored and transported for incineration, separate to other waste. This growth pressures in the area due to the increased tonnages we're experienced in POPs. So we are getting a lot more of the sofas and things like that we need to dispose of. So it is disposal costs. Your second question was on green waste. That's the disposal of green waste. So we have waste. It's legally we can't charge for disposal, only for collection for curbside garden waste. The 91K income is forecast based on the previous year's growth projections. So we're projecting growth because we're projecting growth in brown bins that people have. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Are you happy that's covered?
So thank you. It's just the cost of us taking the brown bins away to the tips. It's not the cost of actually composting it and producing a usable compost. That's not one of our costs.
No, that's not our speciality. We do not produce compost. We give it to somebody, or we pay to give it to somebody else to compost it. But we haven't set up our own company to compost anything. That's something over and beyond what we do
at the moment. Councillor O'Brien, you've got to quit on that one.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, Jan, sorry, it's coming your way. I do apologise. All of these changes and all the pressures have been based on what we know today. Am I right on that? My concern is that from my knowledge from a previous position, a lot of the costs are likely to increase unless we can do some great negotiations, because a lot of the things I believe are coming up for renewal. And do we have any idea how this is likely to affect the numbers we've got in front of us? And as I say, I have total sympathy with the people setting the budget because we're into unknown territory. But I just wonder where this features on the RAG system, because I see looming rather large in red.
Thank you. Yes, and you're absolutely right. Particularly as contracts come up for retendering, there's a sort of certain unknown quantity. We go out to the market and get prices back, which is hopefully the most competitive way of procuring council services. But things do change in the market, and we have a number of contracts coming up in the coming year, which were last put out to the market for tender before COVID. And a heck of a lot has changed in the world since COVID. Energy prices have changed considerably, lots of other factors. So we are looking at a number of particularly transport contract, waste contracts that we've been referring to that may well come back with increases that are above the, if you like, the underlying or the annual rate of inflation, because a lot has changed since these contracts were last put out to the market. But I think if I refer to Mr. Kramer, he may well comment on the role of contingency in dealing with those sorts of pressures.
Yeah, so as has been outlined, and we make assumptions across the count, as was referenced earlier, right? Everything is about assumed demand, so assumed consumption of resource. So the whole budget is underpinned by how much of something do we expect to consume and at what price. So across the council, we've assumed 3.2% as the inflation, which has been applied across appropriate budgets. We also, as was referenced, we have a contingency budget which has about £5 million in it, effectively kind of unallocated to deal with these things as and when they come up. So that adds another element of funding which could be called upon. And then you've also referenced about the commercial negotiations. The paper also references the commercial board, which is established, which for certainly the whole of this financial year, we've used as a council, as a one council central point to deal with and manage supplier uplift requests. So as we go through these retendering processes, we receive a supplier says the new price is going to be X. we go through that commercial board process and allow officers from across the council to scrutinise it, to challenge some of the assumptions, and then go back. Often we'll go back to suppliers as part of that renegotiation. So in summary, we've got a council-wide assumption around inflation. We have a relatively modest contingency budget available as a kind of overspill in the first instance. And also we are very actively engaged in trying to manage those contracts and manage that third-party spend to minimise any inflationary requests to only those which can be absolutely evidenced and are unavoidable.
Thank you for those explanations. I think I understand them. Finance has never been my favourite subject, which is why I leave it to the experts, and you certainly are that, Sean. Can I just go back to the garden waste issue? Because again, it worries me that we've got this increase in charges, but we've taken out the biggest lump of income we've got, which means those charges may be a lot higher. Councillor Brenton talked about compost waste, which is obviously primarily our green bin waste, as well as the grass verge waste, and things like that. I think one of the concerns I've got is each year we put that cost up, we've got to be very careful we don't price it out of people's need. And it just worries me from what Councillor Brenton has highlighted, and thank you for doing it, that this increase on the green waste bin could be quite substantial. Jonathan, do I need to declare an interest bin as I have a green waste bin?
I think that's, I don't think you actually need an answer to that, do you? Because we're not setting the fees here, so we're not voting on that.
No, I just want to make sure. Perhaps somebody could answer on that, please.
Yeah, I will. So the 91,000 is the estimated cost of the green waste waste pressures that we've got, because of the additional bins that we're going to be collecting, because we're forecasting that we're going to have increased revenue from those bins as well. So yeah, it's a stretched income target for curbside waste, and the stretched income for curbside waste is also coincidentally 91,000. I don't like coincidences myself, but that's where we are. So yeah, we're okay, right? I have to say.
Chairman, if I may add, I think the point that Councillor Bryan makes is really valid. A lot of the fees and charges that we levy are discretionary. People choose to buy into the green waste service. People choose to visit Moores Valley Country Park. Indeed, people choose to put in a planning application or not. So there's lots of the fees and charges income in the Police Directorate, which is not statutory. We can't require people to pay it. They choose to opt in. So in setting fees and charges, working with all of the different Police Cabinet members, we always have regard to the laws of supply and demand, because what we don't want to do is put up our charge and see income decrease. Because if we exceed the willingness of the market to pay, that is a potential risk. So in meeting the income target that you referred to, I'm sure one of the discussions that we will be having between officers and cabinet members is whether in fact charges may go up so much that we do ourselves a disservice and see income either stagnate or reduce.
Thank you. I've got two other people waiting to come in. I've got Craig and then Barry. I just want to say we did just receive the 80 pages of fees and charges that have come through. It has some of the information. I didn't realise there's quite so many brand new fees we were introducing that weren't already there. Is it possible to have those put out as a separate list? I'm on a random page and there's two brand new fees for charging schools we didn't used to charge apparently, or just on this one page. And so it'd be useful to know what other brand new charges are coming in this year. If you want the examples were cleaning and caretaking services for maintained and non-maintained schools. Previously was free, now we're going to charge 35 ppn. Don't know what ppn means, but it's on there. And I think what we're looking for is those sort of increases. And if there are brand new charges coming in, I think we should really be aware of what they are before we vote them on the budget. So it'd be great if I could have that information. But Sean, thank you for what you did send through so far. But I think it's going to have more questions from that. Councillor Monks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Craig Monk's Bedminster Ward. Just a quick question going back to still on fees and charges. With regards to car parking charges, it's frozen within this. I know, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm aware that car park charges fund highway maintenance. So if the charging is frozen, but obviously the cost of highway maintenance, I suspect, is going up, and we're relying on the weather, what's the resilience within that element of the budget? And if we have a really poor summer and tarmac's more expensive, then that's going to be a reduction in the funding available for the highways.
Thank you, Councillor Mutz. But that's a very good question. But all in all, the funding on network operations is rising by 304k this year. So we're not, with everything that's put into this budget, we're still going to be £304,000 better off in that network operations. That's the bit that the guys go out and do the stuff like on the roads and fill the potholes and do the salting and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I am told and I believe that the what's in front of me, that's going to be the situation. So
I've got Councillor Cooper, Councillor Bryan, Councillor O'Leary at the moment, so, and Councillor Mercer. Councillor Cooper.
Barry Cooper, Winterbourne North. Mine is on the savings. There's 864,000 there, permanent posts removed March, April 2025. I can understand that. The other bit is next one down but one, 450,000 further post removals to take place in 2026, 27. And I just
Sorry, Councillor, can we come back to you for that shortly? It's on the fees and charges at the moment. Once we finish fees and charges, I'll come back to you. And I agree, I've got a number of questions to follow up on yours, but I'll let you go first on that one. Yeah, fantastic. So the next was Councillor O'Leary. Was that on fees and charges?
I'm still not 100% sure that the comment about relying on the weather to increase the parking revenue despite not increasing the fees was a joke or not. If the weather isn't good, are you folks going to be out there doing a rain dance or enticing people to get down in other ways? What do you anticipate to do to make up any loss from potential bad weather like we've had in previous years where revenue has been down and poor weather was blamed by officers?
Chair, if I may, I think the answer to the question is that if income targets aren't being met, in order to balance the budget, we have to reduce expenditure accordingly. So if in order to deliver the bottom line on the budget at the end of the financial year, if whether it be because the income target was perhaps too much of a stretch, or whether it be because of weather or some other factor, if income targets on the income side of the budget aren't achieved, then we reduce expenditure accordingly to balance the budget on the bottom line at the end of the financial year.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's absolutely true. But I think the question that Councillor Lewis is asking is, you're setting the assumed revenue. You're saying you think it's going to be this much higher, and he's saying, why do you think it'll be that much higher? What is it? What's your rationale for setting it higher? Not what will you do if you fail to meet it? Because I think we understand that bit. Why do you think it'll be that much higher this year without putting the fees up?
The income target there, Chair, is part of the overall target for the budget, not a figure that I could take into the detail and explain how the income sort of car by car or space by space will be achieved.
So really simple then, not asking for that, asking for why you believe. Actually, let's do a really quick yes or no. Do you believe that you are going to make that income target this year?
I think income targets across the police budget are possibly the largest areas of risk on the Directorate's budget for the year ahead.
So that very clearly wasn't a yes. I think I can take from that, which obviously we can't set up. It's not a balanced budget if we have income targets we don't believe we're going to make. I suggest that I would put forward that we should reduce that income target. If the director isn't saying, yes, I'm sure we can make it for these reasons, I think that is gives us cause for concern. We have set a balanced budget, and it's not balanced if the director doesn't believe or isn't saying, yes, I'm going to be able to make that without any problems, or I'm not going to be able to make that. So I think, are we happy that we put that down as something to come back to later as a outcome rather than going further that now? Is there no point in going further into it? Okay, on fees and charges, did you have one? Yep.
I heard the sacred words mentioned earlier on, which is Moores Valley. For those that don't know, I live quite close to Moores Valley. At the last few budgets, I faced pressure previously, and Councillor Andrews has faced pressure recently. You can only go so far on increasing the cost of people going into one of our parks. It concerns me greatly that the parks are very reliant on being cost effective to both sides, both the residents, the visitors and ourselves. But it worries me that we've probably excluded Moores Valley out of the freeze on car parks. Am I right in assuming that?
No, it's car parks, I doubt it.
Separate.
Councillor Bryan is correct. The car parking income for Moores Valley is not a highway car park. It's effectively a private car park for the country park, and therefore that income accrues to the country park budget, not the highways budget.
Okay, I thought that was probably the case, and thank you for the honest answer, because I think that's important. The other thing that I would ask is that you've increased the revenue from car parks without increasing the costs. Now, some of those car parks come under the harbour side of it. It's their budget. I'm a bit concerned that we're going to see a reduction in car park spaces. Are we reliant on the people that can't get into the car parks that we're doing building work in, which I think is about 400 spaces that's affected? Are we hoping that the people will then take their cars to a different car park because that car park's going to very quickly get full? Is that what we're basing the increase on? And whilst I've got this subject, it got raised earlier on that the car park is revenue for highways, but can also point out it is so important from the public transport side as well, because that comes under Jack on highways. And obviously part of the money that we get from the car park is to help subsidise some of those bus routes. It worries me that we're not going to have that money to do the support, because like we discussed earlier on, there are going to be issues with renegotiation of contracts, and the bus service is almost certainly an annual event now, to my knowledge. I don't think it's changed in the last 2 years. They try and get money out of us. I'm just worried that you're not going to have the money to spend on the highways or the public transport. And I think the points that's been raised, and I'm sorry to put you in this position, Jan, we may have overestimated the income that is available, and we may have to revisit it. I know Knox made it a point. Sorry, Chairman.
No, you're fine.
The Chairman's made it a point. And it's suddenly become a big concern for me. It's got a rebel flashing red now.
Sean wants to answer this one about the place. Go for it.
Well, once is a strong word. so I think just in terms of the just on the income, so I'm just in the background getting some more analysis on the breakdown, because I can hear it. I hear the concern around the total £2.5 million of income for place, and then your concern around how much of that is reliant on parking, and then in particular, I'll also come back in a few minutes with the breakdown of how much of that is reliant on kind of pay and display parking, how much is permits, and how much is enforcement. Because again, so just to try and provide you with some reassurance around the exposure that sits on not changing the fees and charges for someone to pay and display parking. There are multiple elements to the income assumptions within that as well. And then in terms of the how much do we, the numbers come through, so I'll read it and then come back to you. And then how much do we, what do we do if we manage that? So again, we've discussed the money put aside for inflation, the money put aside for contingency. So those will need to be played in the event that some of the scenarios you're concerned about happen. And then in particular on highways, obviously the focus this evening is on the revenue budget. There is significant capital spend on our highways network, as well. There's 30-something million is being spent as well. So in terms of, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, obviously we're not looking at that capital, we're looking at this. I'm going to just come back. I want to just quickly get a really quick yes/no answer, because I heard something that I hadn't seen in the paper. Where 400 places are being lost due to building work. Is that correct, Jan? Yes or no?
I think Councillor Bryan is referring to the fact that we've closed off some car parking on the peninsula site in Weymouth while we do the sheep piling around the peninsula. At the moment, we're at sort of peak loss of car parking. We're taking up quite a lot of space, but as the work progresses, the amount of space we're taking up will reduce. So I think it's very much a temporary measure, although through the course of the 8 or 9 months the work is going to take, there will be some car parking loss, but not so much that over the summer season, I think it's going to be a major problem.
Thank you. That wasn't a no, so it was a yes. I think, but it's going to be reducing. And so I think now understand your reticence to agree that it's an achievable parking income and a reasonable one, because if you're losing spaces and not putting prices up, I think it makes sense. So we'll just put that forward through that as a recommendation. On fees and charges, and then Councillor Mercer afterwards, but yes.
Councillor Jack G, Shaftesbury Wood. I actually welcome the fact that we're freezing car parking, and I think most of my residents in Shaftesbury will as well. But my question is, does the portfolio holder have any concerns about the funding for highways, specifically when it comes to maintenance and potholes? One of the things I noted recently was the government pothole map gave Dorset an amber rating. Are you confident that we can improve this?
Again, we'll come back to that after we're on fees and charges. We'll come back to that side to it afterwards, if that's okay, because that's kind of a separate budget line. Are you happy with that? I think we'll probably come to that with the staffing side, and they'll roll it into that part.
Well, I think it comes under fees and charges, because the question I'm asking is he happy if car parking is maintained at the current level, that we will be able to aspire to, I don't know, improve our pothole?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, we would have all seen that we've been rated amber. Amber's not such a bad place to be rated, to be perfectly honest with you. We're because of funding purposes. If you're rated green, how much is the government going to give you? I know they've already set the 4-year targets, but any additional funding will only go to the places that aren't performing absolutely the top percentage. That's what our feeling anyway. That's the way government seems to work these days. So we're going to manage our roads effectively, and we're going to use the data from the government research to make sure that we're putting our wares in the right places. I don't know if Jack wants to go any more than that.
I would just jump in quickly and say I would be hesitant to celebrate getting amber, because that means we're not giving our residents the safest road network they should have. And I think that actually it's a little glib to celebrate it. Our neighbours got green, and I think we should strive to have the safest road network possible. And so that does worry me slightly.
I'll come back to say that we got green. We got green in one of the categories, all right? We got amber in the other 2 categories. And our A roads would have been on their own rated green. So the highways, once again, are doing a really good job. Jack, I don't know if you want to expand any more on the data.
I saw a nod from a chair, so I think that's yes. So my name is Jack Wiltshire, I'm Corporate Director for Highways and Engineering. So the red, amber, green rating, which has come out from DFT, is very useful to see. It's something which local authorities weren't told what the calculations were going to be until it was released. And there's been an awful lot of poring over data in the last couple of weeks. including conversations with the deputy director of the DFT. I think as it moves on, people now know what the boundaries are, and if we want to score green, we can set our processes in place to be able to get into that green category. My biggest concern from the red, amber, green system so far is that it's not an assessment from DFT, it's people effectively, well, it's councils marking their own homework. So we have, in our view, correctly assessed and given a realistic assessment of what our road condition is. Other authorities have taken different interpretations of how to determine what the quality of the roads are. And I see a slight chuckle on your face. I mean, there's obviously anecdotal information, which I won't go into. But what I can say is that we can move on a strategy if we want to move into green, but we can look at our minor road network, which is where we score poorly because we feel we'd be more honest in our minor road network condition.
I think actually that's really important. So actually, I think coming on the validity of the data, it's councils marking their own reports and putting it in, not DFT doing it. And so in reality, the comparisons are nowhere near as useful with other people. And I think maybe we'll look separately at the scrutiny piece on that rather than today on the budget. Steve Mercer, that was on the budgets. So the fees and charges, yes?
Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale Ward. I'm starting to feel a bit sorry for you, Jan, because you're coming in £5 million under budget and we're giving you a hard time on fees and charges. However, I can help you with your £2.5 million uplift. I was recently viciously charged for parking over a white line in a car park. I have to pay 50 quid. If I appeal, I only have to pay £25. I appealed like most people would, I would assume. 3 months I have to wait to get the response for my parking fine. If you brought that down to a week, it'll give you £200,000. Now, that might seem a facetious thing to say, but there's an inefficiency actually that's clogging up or sucking up lots of cash for this council.
I think that was more a point than a question, but I actually think it leads into Councillor Cooper's question, which I think we'll move to now, if that's okay, which was about the staffing and reduction in staffing levels, which obviously is one of the things that does dictate how long it takes to go through these sort of challenges that Councillor Mercer refers to within fines.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was to do with the staff vacancies, and I can understand the 864,000 permanent posts removed back in March, April 2025. What I'm more unsure of is there's another 450,000 for further post removals to take place in the 2026-27, and a lot of us, you know, our services rely on staff to provide the services, and I just hope that when, you know, if we can achieve that, all well and good. You know, I just sort of wonder whether we can, you know. But that was my question, Chairman.
If you will allow me to add to that question, because that's one I had as well. But not only is there the permanent deletion of all posts that were held vacant this year, there's an increase in the held vacancies to 3%, which is another 3% of posts will remain will try to hold as vacancies. Then we're saying on top of that, we'll release another 850,000 through removing those posts permanently within the year. And I think that that's quite a lot of posts going. And I think it's important to have the idea of all three reductions before you answer that question. And I assume that will come to Jan. Yeah.
Yes, if perhaps I could explain a little more fully. The 864,000 permanent removal of posts already taken, they're posts that have become vacant in the current financial year. And we've removed the full budget for those deleted posts for next financial year. So that's the total accrued saving, and that amounts to 28 or 29 posts. And it is opportunistic. It's it's posts that become vacant through the course of the year. It's not planned reductions, it's taking vacancies as they occur. So the further removal of posts in the next in the coming financial year of 450,000 amounts to something like a dozen posts. So essentially what we're saying is that we're expecting that through the course of the year, a dozen posts will become vacant, that we can reprioritise work, restructure teams, work around and delete those posts to make further savings. It amounts to about a dozen posts. And across the place directorate, I haven't got the exact figure, but we've got something like 1,700 full-time equivalents across the place directorate. Now, the dozen posts that this represents is a pretty small proportion of the total.
It is a small proportion of the total, but that total does involve a lot of posts which cannot really be removed, such as, the waste operatives, yeah, and it does more the internal ones, because obviously this year alone, we lost a number of technical support officers, a worrying number of senior planning officers. Councillor Pollard, I was going to ask, because obviously planning isn't a separate directorate within the budget as such, but we've had some legacy issues with planning that was going in the right sort of direction. And I see you've chosen to remove a whole number of staff this year from the ones that are kind of on the ground, the senior planning officers. How many more are you expecting to remove from the posts next year?
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't personally removed anyone. Not me personally. Yeah, not me personally. It's operational. Yeah. So currently in planning, and as you appreciate, we try to retain the planning officers that we need to run the authority, being the 7th or 8th biggest planning authority in the country. And we're conscious of the fact that there is a national shortage of planning officers. They're not easy to come by. So there's not a wholesale dispatch of planning officers. We definitely need them. And under the previous administration, the Grow Your Own was started, where we were taking on apprentices and moving those also officers within the authority and moving them into other aspects of job creation within the authority. So some are moving into planning, giving another string to their bow, making them far more successful in what they were doing in terms of their approach within their job positions within the council authority. So currently at the moment in planning, there's seven vacancies currently, either now or up and coming across development management, planning and enforcement as well. And we will do our best to recruit from that within eternally for those promotions and gaining those transferable skills. So we've got, say, architects within the authority that already can bring across those transferable skills. So it is being hugely successful, and we're continually developing those staff internally.
Sorry, but my question would be, pushing of that is, those 7 posts we're not recruiting to. Those 7 posts we're not recruiting to. Those are being removed. So you've lost how many senior building control surveyor, 2 of them, senior planning officer, 4 senior planning officers, a standard planning officer. You've lost a lot this year. Those posts have been deleted and are no longer being recruited to. So while we're trying to improve planning, and it's actually been, it's been getting better, we've been pleased with how that's working. How are you going to assure us that you're going to continue to deliver that while, frankly, slashing a number of posts from within the team?
Thank you, Chairman. So some of that has come back through restructuring within the planning department, and how they restructured that and how they're coping with that type of work. We can't afford to fail on planning. That comes with serious consequences, which the Section 151 officer wouldn't thank me or the planning team if we get into that remit. So as I said, currently there are 7 up and coming vacancies which we will fill, and the team are confident that we can maintain our stance in delivering the planning service that we need to as a statutory responsibility.
So Jan, can you help just reunite how the information I have is that those 7 posts are not being fulfilled and are being cut out of the budget, but the cabinet member thinks they are being fulfilled. Can you just make that marry up for us, please?
Yes, of course. If I can get my speaker to work. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, indeed. And I think the solution to the question you're posing is that we don't automatically delete the post. Every post that comes up as vacant is reviewed. So in exactly the same way that you're referring to bin men or bin women or lifeguard attendants in leisure centres or many roles where actually if it's vacant, we can't operate with the post being filled. So we automatically fill those posts. And in planning or highways or other areas, if a vacancy comes up, we look at the workload in that team, we look at the priorities for that team, we look at how we're running the business. So it's not a nil-sum game. We don't do everything as we have always done it and just have fewer people. We keep changing how we're working. So every time there's a vacancy, the manager responsible, the senior team in place, look at that vacancy and say, is this an opportunity to make a saving? Have too many savings already been taken from this team and do we need to replace, or is this an area where actually this is a really critical role and we have to recruit to it immediately? So we make a case-by-case judgment, which is why on other occasions in the chamber, when I've been challenged by members about the suggestion that there's a blanket vacancy freeze, I always respond by saying no. There's a blanket vacancy reassessment, but not a blanket freeze.
Thank you. But going back to the question, the list here of the officers, the positions that are being terminated and deleted from our structure includes all those planning officers I just listed. The cabinet member believes they're being refilled. Can you let us know, is the list you've submitted correct or is the cabinet member correct?
No, the list is correct. The cabinet member is referring to other posts. Because we have across the council something like 400 or 500 people leave a year. The place directorate, I imagine, is something in the order of 120, 140 of those 400 or 500 people. So with those numbers, you can see that taking out the 30 or so that I referred to is only perhaps 25 or 30% of the vacancies that occur. So in answer to your question, both myself and the cabinet member are right.
So in planning where the team is, around 20-ish, you've deleted 7 posts and you've got 7 more free ones at the moment, meaning that's 14 currently understaffed posts. That surprises me that it's running so well with that. And I think that's good. If you're both correct, that's fantastic. Just very surprising.
Need to be addressed.
Chair, the cohort of the planning department is a great deal larger than 20. I hesitate because I can't tell you the exact figure off the top of my head. But in terms of total quantum of the planning department, it's a lot more than 20 people.
Yes, sorry, I believe the whole department absolutely would be. I just meant the actual planning officers, that side to it, which is a much lower number, which is what the majority of the deleted posts were. But that's fine. If that is the case, then that is the case. Oh, sorry.
I was simply going to add, Chair, that one of the ways we continue to modernise the planning service is that increasingly, in common with lots of councils, we provide support staff who are not necessarily qualified planners to undertake those parts of the planning system that don't require the attention of a properly and fully qualified planning officer. So it's not uncommon if you look at large local authorities like Dorset. We do a lot of planning applications. Cabinet member said 7th largest number of planning applications in the country. Increasingly, the modernisation of planning, the use of information technology in planning, means that planning is conducted by a whole suite of different professionals, not just planning officers.
Fantastic, thank you. Obviously, I think it'll be interesting to find out a lot more because there must be some very impressive change happening within the planning department to be able to maintain the quality without that. So that's fantastic. So I'm pleased to hear it. Any other questions on the redundancy? Yeah, those are not redundancies. The removal of posts due to vacancies. Councillor Monks.
Thank you, Chair. I think you partly answered my question in that last response, actually. But one of the things you mentioned, among many points, was using different staff in different ways. And I just wonder, you also mentioned if we get this wrong, that in itself can be quite expensive. It's probably sort of leaking into a different budget line, but not replacing members of staff seems like a fairly easy thing to do, and we can use kind of support officers to help those lesser planning officers as one example. You think about sort of a reduction in numbers in community highway officers or bin bin people, or there's a whole kind of example of sort of frontline services, but how robust are we in terms of making sure that the right people, the right qualifications are actually doing the job? Because I know from a previous experience that support staff are great, but some people need to be qualified to be able to deliver it. If they don't, we're going to lose those savings in fines and everything else. And as you alluded to, your colleague at the front will start losing money. So I'm interested in the robustness of that.
Well, yes, you're making a very valid point, and that in the balance of meeting budget targets and maintaining performance, there's always a certain amount of risk. But I think, as the chair has already said, the fact that we've reduced over time the number of employees we have in planning, for example, and yet have lifted our performance in planning, shows what I was saying, that we don't just keep trying to do it the same old way with less and less people, that we modernise how we function, we invest in information technology. Increasingly in planning, we're looking at artificial intelligence and how that might help. And one of the tasks of senior managers in the council is to, sort of fit those cycles together, so that in the grand balance of it, we don't deliver service failure, that we continue to maintain at least a status quo, and better still, improvement where we can.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, on a similar strain, planning applications are on the decline at the minute nationally and in Dorset. So is the change in the planning department based on current workloads, which are lower, or are they based on a projection that they will increase back to normalish levels in future, or is it based on a continued decline in the number of planning applications?
Yeah, if I may, I'll make a comment and then hand over to the cabinet member, if that's okay. So to be clear, no, we're not sort of basing our budget projections on a terminal decline or a reduced number of planning applications. If we look at the data over time, planning applications ebb and flow with the economy, not quite in sync. It's often like a bit of a time lag after the economy dips. But over a sort of 2 or 3 year cycle, planning applications go down and go up again. So we factor that into our thinking. But Councillor Bartlett may wish to add further.
Not a lot to add. No, you are right. With obviously the increasing use of AI, that's going to come into a factor as well, and how we deal with the plan applications going in the future, which will ultimately end up cutting some of the staffs that we got. But because we haven't got a crystal ball about how the economy is going to go, so globally, looking at what's going on, you don't imagine it's going to be a rosy picture in the immediate future. But obviously we have to monitor that. We do monitor that for that variance as time goes on, and make sure that we've got a sufficient planning team in place that can do the amount of work they're doing. And at the moment, there's no great expectation to absolutely slash the planning team, because it's a responsibility we have, a statutory responsibility we have. We need to make sure we've got the team in there that can actually process the work.
One thing that can make we gain quite a high proportion of our planning income from a relatively small number of very big applications. So in a busy year, as few as a dozen big applications can make a huge difference to the income and planning. And in a fallow year, only having 2 or 3 of those planning applications can make an equally big difference the other way, which is why it's not quite a perfect science of being able to project, income in relation to the economy.
But you are projecting a decent increase in them because you're increasing the fees, and it's going to make a decent part of that 2.5 million for the increased fees. So hopefully that is the case.
And planning fees are regulated by government at the moment, and government continues to promise local authorities greater flexibility over planning fees to reflect the actual cost of dealing with planning. At the risk of making a slightly political statement, if the government could deliver that for us, that would be very welcome.
Councillor O'Leary.
On a separate item, which is around the collection of income made through collection of income made more efficient through advanced technology, a saving of £481,000. And then the detail is even less. Using more digital tools to improve debt recovery is, I know AI can do a lot of things, but I mean, are we talking about robotic bailiffs here? I mean, what is the actual detail on that? And does that have an impact on staffing? Page 82.
So I can give some narrative. This is in the corporate appendix based on the description. So if you're happy to move to corporate fees and charges now, or
can we save that one before we get to the corporate appendix and stick to the place one at the moment? That's okay. Anyone waiting to speak on place stuff? Go for it, Ray.
Yeah, it would be very helpful for all councillors to be able to understand the difference between the statutory requirements and the requirements that give us a bit of flexibility. I don't know how complicated that would be, Sean, to achieve, but I do think there's a possibility, or it would help us look at where we need to make savings. There are certain things we cannot change. They're not in our control, but there are other things that we may be able to change. And I know from previous experience that one of those areas actually features into getting children to school, because there is a level that is a statutory duty and there's an increased level that is non-statutory, as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be quite interesting to see what are the statutory duties and what are the non-statutory duties that give the administration some flexibility.
As that doesn't relate directly to a budget line on, I think that's a request to do separately from this committee. If that's okay, rather than going through all that now, because I don't think it's pertinent to the paper here, because that's more the strategic choices that rather than the validity of it, if that's okay. Councillor Jones.
It's okay. My question is on send transport, if that's okay. I think it probably comes under, yeah. So how will the council ensure that changes to send transport do not widen rural inequality for children who already face long journeys and limited local provision?
Thank you, Chair. The send transport budget is one that this council pays a great deal of attention to. And in fact, over the last 2 or 3 years, the council has reviewed and modernised and updated the way we operate home to school transport, particularly for children and young people with special educational needs. And we frequently compare what we do and how we function with other local authorities. And we've got a good base for evidence for saying that in a very complicated area that is very expensive, we do this work as well as any other council in the country. And I have great confidence in that. And it's an interplay between the Place Directorate, where we provide the transport function, and our colleagues in Children's Services who own the policy within which we work. And I think in the past, it was fair to say that the dialogue between colleagues in the Place Directorate and colleagues in Children's Services was not as strong as it now is. And we do factor into that dialogue the sort of thing that you're referring to. And another line in this table talks about send transport reviews. And that's a reference not to reviewing the whole service, but literally drilling down into the service we provide to individual children, the service we provide sometimes to a school, and looking at all of the children who are going to that educational setting. So we really do get quite granular in send, because the penalty for a council that doesn't do it in that granular way is a huge cost increase. I mean, really quite eye-watering. So yes, I think I can assure you that we do what you're asking. And I think we've got good evidence to suggest we do it as well as any big council in the country. And indeed better than many.
That's reassuring to hear. Thank you. Cheers.
On the send question, how much did you save in the send budget this year for the send transport budget?
In the current financial year, Sean, you may have to help me, but I think there is a small underspend in the send transport budget, but we've allowed for some growth in that budget because typically transport costs do run ahead of general inflation. So really the exercise the council have been going through in the last 2 or 3 years with the send budget is to contain growth, not to reduce expenditure massively. And we've been very successful at containing growth. And Sean has just emailed me to say that there's about £2.5 million under, which is why the relative growth in the SEND budget for next year is relatively modest, because the first thing we will do is absorb that unspent headroom from the current financial year.
Fantastic. And because obviously we've been working on the SEND review for a number of years now, which is really good. And I know it's going positively. I was trying to give you a bit of a this is going well moment, because there's another 500,000 put in. It just sort of surprised me that you're increasing the budget, but you're also saying there's going to be a 500,000 saving. It just strikes me as slightly disingenuous to increase the budget for SEND transport and to say there's going to be a saving for it. It seems like surely you shouldn't be increasing it if you're going to have the saving there. Why would you put both on there? It's almost double accounting or showing a saving that wouldn't be there.
I think Mr. Kramer will come in. I think what we're trying to do is be transparent to members, because we could have put in a net figure and just said, well, the difference is this much. But I think the purpose of the budget paper is to demonstrate to members that, some costs increase, some decrease, and you can see both directions of change, not just the net result.
Fantastic. Yeah, if that is so, it is to demonstrate transparency. I just wasn't quite sure why it was both. And also I wondered why it was only set at 500 million when you had been so successful, 500,000, sorry, when you had been so successful this year in saving considerably more than that. I was wondering why you thought it would be lower this time.
There are a lot of moving parts in the SEND budget. There are growing numbers of children with special educational needs. There's a changing market of suppliers for those needs. Transport costs are more volatile than ever. So those up and down changes are basically the result of a lot of modelling that look at all of those moving parts and come to those conclusions.
So it's erring on the side of caution, which is a really smart way of setting a budget we can believe in. I'm very happy with that. Thank you. Any other questions on the SEND? Yeah, Councillor Monks.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to go back to planning, actually. Would you rather me help? It was a point that I just wanted to make earlier, and we got lost in all the different conversations. We're currently obviously operating outside of a 5-year housing land supply. And that kind of opens the door to kind of speculative applications being submitted. When we were talking earlier on about the number of officer and support officer roles, have we factored the possible anticipated rising cost of those applications coming in here, there, and everywhere? Because that could be quite a big change to how it looks.
No, I think it's a flood of planning applications is the point.
Oh, yeah, so can I use that one?
Yeah.
I just use this microphone so I'm facing you. Yeah, we're back to that crystal ball thing, aren't we? That while we don't have a 5-year land supply, and the view would be that we could be open to speculative development and seeing those developers coming forward before we have a local plan in place. As I alluded to before, with what's going on globally, whether that's going to affect international markets, that would then have an effect on the local economy, national economy, as it were, then that starts impacting on banks as to whether banks have the confidence to start lending. If the banks don't lend, developers don't build. Developers won't build either if there isn't the confidence within the house buying market for the residential population to actually buy housing. So we're in that unknown at the moment as to which way the markets will go. I think it's fair to say that we're seeing a downturn at the moment in terms of developers in building housing at the moment. That's all starting to slow down, and we'll have to just wait and see how that progresses. But just give you assurance, we will have a planning team in place that does cope, or that will cope. And as I said, AI is coming down the road quite rapidly now, and that will help with the council budget savings that we're envisaging. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bartlett. I understand the points you make. I guess my worry is that whilst there's that window where developers, certainly the larger developers, can just chuck in applications for any old bit of land that may or may not form a future plan, that bit doesn't cost them as much money as actually then building 1,000 houses on that plot. But obviously it'll cost us the money to then process those applications that may not go anywhere, but landlock, going forward. It doesn't make any difference to them, but it could make a big difference to us, couldn't it?
Yeah, there will obviously the work will need to be done by the planning teams in terms of how they process those applications that come through. Because despite not having a 5-year land supply, those applications would still be subject to all the necessary material planning considerations, and all of that work that's done by the planning team to evaluate as to whether or not it is a viable and worthy application that will progress forward to planning consent. Thank you.
Which goes back to the fact that quite often the cost to the council doing that isn't covered by the fees. They have to pay for it. Councillor O'Leary and then Councillor Took. Excellent. Councillor Took.
I was just on that last point about multiple applications. They pay for them. You put in multiple applications, you pay for it. So you've put in an application for 200 houses, and then you change it and put in another application, you pay for it again. So that's all good revenue. I'm not sure what your point was.
I think clearly the point was the fact that what they pay is less than what it costs us. It's a net loss. Oh, it's not. Oh, then why are we asking the government for more money? Because it is the case. But sorry, Councillor Took says it's not. Councillor Bartlett?
Sorry, yeah. So in terms of planning application fees are set by government, like a lot of our fees are set by government. On those types of fees where it's just to build one house or an extension, that sort of thing, our council taxpayers, it will come as a shock and a horror, actually subsidise that, because the fee that we're allowed to charge doesn't cover the cost of administration and processing that plan application. But obviously on the big developments, when you're talking about major developments of 50 houses above, then that planning fee income from those developers does cover the costs. It's far greater. And that's where we then start getting into the discussions around viability and Section 106 agreements and SIL and all the rest of it. Major ones. We do that on a plan application anyway, but obviously with the big applications, then that's a much bigger discussion that goes on. Thank you.
I do apologise. So just to clarify, the fees set by government are more than enough for large applications. We're not asking the government to increase them because they're not enough. That's a simple yes or no answer.
Yes.
Sorry, let me rephrase then. Are we asking the government for more money because it isn't enough, or are we not?
Change it.
We would prefer the government to give us more flexibility over planning fees, because we don't always cover our costs when we receive planning applications. But by and large, the bigger the application, the greater the fee income.
So I asked very clearly for a yes or no answer. If we can't get one, I'll move on to the next, and that's fine. Councillor Monks.
Thanks, Chair. And just to qualify, the reason I asked the question is actually I think the cost of the council is twofold. One, it's obviously the financial cost, but then it's also the staffing cost, because if you have a small increase of speculative applications, but there's obviously a smaller staffing number, those members of staff will be focused onto that, as well as other applications that we may miss deadlines, get fines, things like that. So it's not necessarily a case of, there'll be some applications where we make money from them, there'll be some that we lose, but it's not just the individual. If the staff and numbers are lower, then there's less resilience in the team to be able to cope with even a small increase. That was the point I wanted to make.
Sorry, it's just a question for Jan. Are you confident that you can deliver the savings outlined through removing these posts? In terms of...
Sorry, which posts are you referring to? Sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, so back to those. Yeah.
The posts that have been removed are already removed, so that saving is made. The £450,000 for further post reductions in the coming financial year will be dependent on where vacancies arise, because effectively they're opportunistic savings. If we get to the situation where a vacancy arrives in a planning team that has already seen a number of posts deleted, that's an example of the sort of situation where we may well say, no, on this occasion, we're going to recruit to that post because we can't bear any further reduction in the numbers of staff in that team.
Happy with that? Yep. Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, sorry. Am I able to move off the sexy subject of planning onto something a bit more glamorous, which is household recycling centres, please? I've had worse. The £60,000 savings from new household recycling centre booking system, which will reduce cross-border usage and save money, reliant upon the tip booking system, as it says on here. Is that just for the current 4 tips that are going through the trial, or is that for a further expansion of that? And secondly, do you anticipate that the proposals from our friends across the border in Wiltshire to bring in a tip booking system, which is more or less in retaliation to ours, will impact on our budget and perhaps negate some of the savings from that 60,000?
Thank you very much, Councillor Leary. The 60,000 is in addition to the 60,000 we saved in this financial year, so it's 120,000. If Wiltshire want to bring in a booking system, that's fine. They can charge us, we can charge them. But at the moment we will be charging people from outside of our organisation in those 4 HRCs that we are putting the booking system into. I don't see an expansion at the moment, but it's all down to data. The importance of the HRC booking system is getting the data, which means we can ferret out the trade wasters that go in, the commercial wasters go in, and people from cross border. We consider that the £60,000 saving will be added to considerably by sifting out the trade waste, but we can't do anything without getting the data. And the ANPR cameras and the system itself will give us that data.
Sorry, thank you. But is there been any research or any work done to anticipate that if any of these savings will be impacted if Wiltshire does bring in a tip booking system, which they are discussed?
No.
Oh, they have publicly said. I assumed it was a Liberal Democrat policy because they're doing the same as we're doing, so I just assumed it was that. If it's not, that's different. But no, they have stated it that they are doing it. So you might wonder. So that's another outcome, is to look at that again. Oh, Sean, were you aware of it?
Just putting clarity that the charge, I believe, is the charge of the user, so the person that goes to the site and disposes or recycles the waste. So if another council area were to introduce a charge for it, that would be a charge to the user, i.e. the member of public that chose to use that site, so that the council wouldn't incur a cost based on where somebody chooses to go.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point I was getting at is if someone from Dorset is going into Wiltshire to dump waste, and then instead of going across Wiltshire to dump waste because they don't want to pay, they dump it in a Dorset HMRC, that will increase the amount of waste being processed at a Dorset waste centre, therefore increasing the number of people using it. And if it is such a big issue, we're trying to cut down and save money in that regard, and we're going to have more people using our services, and therefore, it's a demand-led service. So what I'm saying is, if people stop using Wiltshire because they don't want to pay, will that impact based on increased users of Dorset HMRCs?
I can't see that happening because they'll have to pay if they come into Dorset. We'd have to pay if we went into Wiltshire, and our users are free. I can't see where you're coming from. Sorry, you're confusing the issue, I think.
So sorry, I think what I think I'm now confused by is we brought in the ANPR and the booking system because actually it stops people from out of county coming in the same way. Yeah, because we said that would save money. Yeah. And so now when the county next to us is doing the same, the people that will no longer be able to go there will have to come to us instead, therefore costing us more, is what Councillor Leary's saying. And that must be the case, or the savings wouldn't be there. It's not like only Wiltshire people do it, surely.
I do believe the modelling shows that more people come into Dorset than go out. All right, so I don't believe that it's going to be a problem.
Thank you very much. That's what modelling shows. Excellent. I don't understand it, but I'm guessing the modelling is probably more likely to understand it than I am. So perfect. We're to move on. Yep, Alex.
I like lights. Can I move the subject on to what looks looks like good news, I hope, and I'd just like a little bit of elucidation or illumination even. The reduction in street lighting costs through procurement and the estimate based on current expectations of energy prices, is this purely energy prices, or does it also include things like the changing of street lighting to lower intensity, things like that? In other words, are we improving our street lighting so therefore it costs less, which surely is good news? Could I just have a bit of detail? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So street lighting comes under me as a highways aspect. Yes, it's both of those things. So it's a programme of replacing some of our older street lights, which would have been more inefficient, but also looking to see that energy costs are less than what we might have predicted. So we're looking to see, we obviously have to look at the markets, but having reduced energy price estimates compared to last year will allow us to reduce some of those energy costs. Effectively this year, we've seen some savings because we had predicted that energy prices might go up, and we can bring that saving into next year.
Councillor Leary.
Changing the subject again, but staying on page 79, the reduction of the sport and community arts culture grant from £575,000 to £500,000. It says this does not affect leisure centres. Do we know if it will affect any buildings that we do own that are rented out to sports and community groups, etc.? And isn't just reducing that by £75,000 a bit mean and a bit penny pinching?
So can we get an answer on the, does it affect any of our buildings and that cost? And then I'll go to the cabinet member for the strategic one with the slight addition.
Right, so no, it does not affect any of our built leisure facilities, whether provided directly or by a partner.
Thank you. So then I believe that'll be Ryan, I'm guessing. Sorry, Councillor Hope. And this is it's an interesting choice to do cutting 15% off this grant budget. How will that affect the third sector and how will that play out afterwards? I guess that's Councillor Leary's question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Ryan Hope, Cabinet Member for Customer Culture and Community Engagement. Yes, there's a reduction in this funding. As the officers alluded to, it's not to do with sports or leisure facilities that we run, and it is to do with the grant-based system that we offer as a council. Part of the reduction in funding, though, is going to be how we operate it back office. Again, we're looking to consolidate the team across the grants sectors and introduce AI, again, to help manage the grant applications to reduce officer workload. The other thing to recognise is, though, we are still very highly funded in this grant stream and this line of work compared to other local councillors. Councils, not councillors. So, yes, there is a reduction, but most of it will be seen from back office support, and we are still considering ourselves to be highly supporting the area.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a reduction in the total budget for that grant, not a reduction in the grant pot.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Leary.
Can I push back on that slightly? Because it clearly states it's to reduce the total grant allocation for leisure and the arts. You're taking 15% of the grant allocation. It doesn't mention back office or that side to it, because presumably that wouldn't be in part of that savings area. So you're saying you're not reducing it, and that was actually a typo on the report, which will be fixed, ready for cabinet?
Sorry, Chair, my misunderstanding there on the question. Yes, the amount in the paper is what the allocation to the grant pot is being reduced by, but of course, as part of a bigger part of the reduction.
Okay, so back to the question then, is that 15% cut in grant for leisure and arts? Can you kind of talk around how that won't affect the third sector and community projects and how we'll maintain having those available? Because I think that's where the concern is there. Or then we're moving on to the efficacy of cuts rather than the validity of the budget. So maybe that's inappropriate for this forum, because it's just a cut to the grant. You'll challenge me there. Oh yeah, cool. So we'll move on. Super. Great, go for it.
Yeah, question, if I may, on the on two sections of the report. If I look at page 49, it shows quite clearly there is a reduction in cross-border waste costs, and yet on page 78, under pressures, you've got a 60,000, exactly the same number, as a pressure on what is a cross-border waste. Can I get some clarity on exactly what that means?
And also with that clarity, can we add in how the modelling shows that this isn't the case?
Yeah, sorry, John Andrews, Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne Ward, East Ward. The £60,000 is costs that we're anticipating the Hampshire Council are going to charge us for the cross-border Summerley site waste, which is directly linked to their booking system, so they can tell the exact numbers. So that's what we're expecting, or that's what we're forecasting that we're going to do. Sorry, what was the first bit of your question, Ray?
You on page 49, you say that there's a reduction in cross-border waste costs of the same 60,000. You're saying it's going to cost us more at one point, saying it's costing us the same amount less on another, and today told us that more people leave Dorset than come into Dorset. Sorry, more people come into Dorset than leave Dorset, and the whole set doesn't quite marry up.
Yeah, but we've got figures that show us that we are going to reduce the cross-border waste from Somerset and Wiltshire by £60,000. Okay.
Fantastic. So just to summarise, make sure I've understood fully, the total amount cost to go to all outer border counties is going down by, we're going to save £60,000. We also have a pressure where we're going to spend £60,000 more going cross-border just to Summerley. And we also believe that more people come in than leave for waste disruption. Other way around, more people will leave Dorset than come into Dorset. Okay. Super. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any further questions on that, Councillor Leary, or sorry, Councillor Wax, whatever it was?
Sorry, can you just repeat what you just said? You just so people don't come across county to use our tips. Some do, right? But I'm a bit confused here. Some do, some don't. I mean, we brought the tip booking system in. Sorry, I'm talking to the cabinet member, not the puppets. I'm asked the question: is you brought a tip booking system in to catch people coming across county, or is it primarily to catch people doing trade waste? What is the biggest saver of money on the tip booking system?
Both. We don't want people coming across border. We do get the occasional one down in Wimborne, and we've proven that with surveys. We don't get many cross borders in Dorchester, but in Sherborne and Shaftesbury, which are on the border, we get an awful lot of people coming across border at the moment. So stopping them by having the booking system is going to save us a lot of money.
I'm actually going to draw a bit of a line onto this because I think they're doing currently a pilot in the other ones. So that will come to scrutiny. So when it comes to scrutiny, we can try to marry up the, in my opinion, very conflicting information we've been given tonight, but we're being told that all of those predictions are accurate. It will cost us 60,000 more and we'll have a £60,000 saving. So that's brilliant. I guess, again, that's transparency. Councillor O'Leary?
Yeah, sorry, it's on gas and electric fees. Sorry? Someone say no. I'm sorry. It's about gas and electric fees. There's an increase in gas and electric fees across all of the areas. When seeking a deal on our gas electric tariffs, do we seek the cheapest deal? Do we do the government scheme where they get us a deal for it, or part of the wider thing? I know local town councils do that. Or do we go to the supplier that's the most sort of eco-friendly, carbon-friendly, etc., in line with our nature and climate and ecological emergency commitments?
So the detail it's on, then the part of that I think would go to Councillor Ireland, because that was a strategy about making sure it matches up with our ecological climate things. Yeah, fantastic.
So the council receives its utilities through something called Laser, which is, I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's like a local authority, it's like a buying consortium that all work together to buy the prices. We also offer access to that contract to schools and other kind of council partners effectively can buy into that to receive a cheaper rate. I'm not sure of the weighting of the merits in terms of what the primary drivers are in that, but I believe effectively what we're achieving is a greater bulk buying discount. I'm not sure of the merits in terms of who the actual supplier is that provides it, because it's not a domestic supply in the way that you might go to E.ON or EDF or somebody based on their clean energy credentials. We're buying it off through Laser.
And then Councillor Arnold, do you want to come in and explain how that marries up with our corporate our plan on climate ecologically and the impact? Because presumably there's an impact assessment that's been done on our energy usage.
I don't think that's a question relevant to the budget. The budget is what it is. In terms of a strategic policy, I would like to have the greenest energy possible, but we are currently using the current framework that was introduced by the previous administration.
No worries, thank you. I thought I'd give you a chance to respond because Councillor Lee asked political questions, so I tried to get a chance for a political answer if you wanted it. Anyone else on the place, or can we move to public health and protection, which I think is a skip unless anyone's found anything in there that is particularly relevant to us? No? Oh, yep, Councillor Brenton.
Sorry, is it going to work? I know it's a very small amount, really, in comparison with our massive budget, so I don't want to spend hours on it. But the income generated from markets did not fully cover the cost of providing them. Sounds like a not very well run market. You're supposed to make money out of markets. So I just wondered if there was any explanation.
Absolutely, go for it. I'm assuming that's placed because we own the market, the property. So if the appropriate officer or cabinet member put their hand up, that'd be great.
Market service is part of the public health and community protection function.
Absolutely, and is an asset we own.
We own, but I'm afraid within my knowledge, I'm not able to answer the question that's been asked. I would suggest that we ask the service that manages that budget to respond in writing after the meeting.
Okay, yep, thank you very much. I think, again, this comes back to something we discussed previously with property and assets and the fact that we have a difference that we own the property, but we are passing it to a different portfolio to then manage it, which means that it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, corporate landlord model. What? Councillor Bryan.
Yeah, before we move off place, can I just ask a question that's been causing me a problem over the last few years? John says I can't ask, but I will. The green minibuses, which you pick up the bills on, adult services charge for the service, but they keep the revenue. Isn't it time we did something about that? Because the revenue should either go with the cost or the cost should go with the revenue.
I think that's basically the same as the market question as well, because the cost of the market is there, but someone else is claiming the income for it. So I guess that would be written answer afterwards, or do you answer the market one as well? Because it's the same.
And so again, it's the market one's like a £60,000 pressure, so I'm not close enough to the detail, but I believe it's as it's set out in the paper that the income isn't going to cover the cost, so there's a increase in cost, and I assume the service haven't been able to, for example, renegotiate with the market stalls an equivalent increase in the rent or the service charges that are levied to cover that, hence it being a net pressure. In terms of the spend on minibuses and the income from minibuses, I suppose my question back to the committee would be, what would be the point of moving that? Because it's the council's overall net budget would remain unaffected by moving the income from one service to another. It's net would be net nil.
Bidders with the place scrutiny. it's from the place scrutiny that we're asking the question as to why it hasn't been moved. Because I understand in the overall picture, it's going to be the same number, but place services get judged on their performance. And it seems unfair that they pick up the cost and yet the income, the revenue goes to somebody else. And I just think I would ask that we look at it, because to me, it's quite a simple thing to move. I know it will affect other people, but we're talking about place. And that to me is an issue within place.
I'm going to push back slightly. It's always fun when we argue. I see no merit in it because the services aren't judged on what they do. Place came in a £5 million saving this year. They blew in brilliantly, and they're being punished by having the stuff cut. Whereas adults and children's failed to make savings and overspent and are having theirs uplifted. I don't think there's any reward system. I don't think actually the actual judgment on it makes a blind bit of difference. The ones that are not operating as successfully are getting bigger budgets. The ones that are operating successfully are having theirs reduced in some. So I would argue the validity to needing to do it that way. That doesn't seem to be how the administration works. Actually, that was political. So do you want to come back?
No, I wasn't going to talk about that at all. I'm just trying to give you some insight into the markets. So I sat on the Dorchester Market Joint Panel for 5 years. I don't now, since 24. I believe from my experience on the income is essentially there's somebody who runs the market for us, essentially, ENSOs. The contract is coming to an end, but essentially there is a contract. So they provide a proportion of their income to Dorset Council based on the contract framework they run under. I think I'm right in saying that just very recently the market is being handed over to Dorchester Town Council when the contract finishes, so which I think is sometime next year. So what these numbers reflect the current situation, but going forward, essentially there's a new agreement, Dorchester Town Council, and I don't know what the effect on the numbers, but they will be paying us something.
Just a point of clarity, I just to ask because it will affect next year's budget. We're handing over the charter, though, not the actual land. That's correct, isn't it? Oh, in fact, I've got someone that I think might be answering it up there.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sarah Williams Bridport, and currently sitting on the market panel, vice chair of it. So I can answer this question. Dorset Town Council will be taking over the management of the market, and therefore the money coming from a market will be split between Dorset Council and Dorchester Town Council, rather than a freeway split, which was Dorset Council, ENSOs who were managing it, and a small amount also went to Dorchester for part of their work as well. So it's going to be a much better and much cleaner operation coming in April, we hope.
Fantastic. One would assume that it'll be the same as all the other market towns where the market town run it, get whatever profit or loss comes from the market, and they pay the cost for the parking spaces, the full cost, because that is what every other market town does. So I assume it'll be the same for that. Otherwise, I'll guess that will be a scrutiny thing, but I'm sure it'll be the same. So moving on to the next part, can we go down to the corporate development and legal side to it? Yeah. Oh, no, shake your head, Alex. You don't want to do that? No, you are happy to. Sorry, I thought you might have a question on the last one. Oh, no, Councillor Bryan does. Go for it.
Sorry, it's another place issue. Can I just ask the portfolio holder or Jan, we used to do all the road gritting for national highways, which actually was in our revenue side. I believe that contract has now come to an end. How much does that affect the numbers that we're putting forward for next year, or has it already been excluded? Excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. So this contract is what we call the DBFO contract with National Highways, and where National Highways are coming to the end of the DBFO, they're looking at operating a different model. We only operate 3 gritters on the National Highways network, so although there is an income from that, it's a relatively modest one. It's in comparison to the £1 million we need to spend on the winter service ourselves, it's a small percentage.
So we're going to have 2 vehicles that aren't going to be in use. Does that reduce our costs on the gritting side, which I think is important to all of us? And I'm going to take the opportunity to congratulate the gritting team the way they've kept our roads safe over the last couple of months, because it's been a most difficult period for them. I don't think people realise that they get out of their bed in the middle of the night, but still do some work the following day. I take my hat off to them. I've been out there with them, and it's not easy, and they always upset the motorists, but please pass my thanks on to them. I just want to know what we're going to do with those 2 extra vehicles. Do they become spares?
Thank you, Ray. At the moment, National Highways still haven't built their other depot. I do not expect them to be able to be gritting by next winter season. So we will continue to work with National Highways to provide that service. At the point where National Highways don't want to utilise us for that, we would look to see whether utilise them elsewhere or sell them.
Councillor O'Leary. Then let's move to corporate legal. Ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. I've got 2 questions. One is non-achieved restructure saving across cultural services. It says that those weren't met, they were not feasible for 25-26, a saving of £50,000. Why would they be feasible next year if they weren't feasible last year? What's changed?
Yeah, although that is a pressure, because I think they're saying they're not making those savings. They're not making that saving. They are still keeping the same structure they currently have.
Apologies. I'll go on to increase in running costs for customer services out of hour, £141,000 due to the changes to the employment terms and conditions of our standby, overtime and call-out rates and staff in the out of hours service. £141,000 is quite a lot of money. Can I have some more information about what the actual changes in those terms and conditions are that are leading to that increase?
Thank you, councillors. Lisa Cotton, Corporate Director for Transformation, Customer and Cultural Services. That they are technical term and condition changes. So reviews of contracts were taking place for our out-of-hours services, and those technical changes needed to take place to make sure that we were fulfilling our contracts for those people that work 24/7, 365 days of the year. So they are fulfilling those out-of-hours services, responding to emergency calls that cover a number of services, including highways, safeguarding, homelessness. So it's a really essential service, but it was a technical employment change to those terms and conditions that we were required to make.
So the cost has come from having to pay for additional staffing hours, I'm guessing, as a result of that?
It's not additional staff, it's the same number of staff. It's a change to those terms and conditions that needed an increase in what we pay. So same number of staff, but it's increasing our costs overall.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, the question I asked earlier, which is collection of income made through more efficient through advanced technology, £481,000. It was about the robotic bailiffs, as it were, using more digital tools to improve the recovery of debt. What's the actual score with that? I mean, how are you going to use technology to recover debt?
So I can assure you it's not robotic bailiffs, so it won't be a kind of a Terminator style person knocking at anyone's door anytime soon. Effectively it is using we're exploring using AI tools, such as some communication tools which will allow people to contact the council and about an unpaid invoice or a debt that they owe, and have a kind of conversational approach to managing that debt. It also allows for some outbound contact. So, for example, if we are looking to contact somebody about an invoice or something, we're able to use some of those tools more quickly, and obviously 24/7. So people can, for example, one of the things being explored is whether or not like WhatsApp can be used, so people can kind of use WhatsApp to discuss a debt or rearrange a payment. Do it at 8 o'clock at night when you're watching TV or something, rather than only be able to phone into the council. So the saving is effectively through earlier collection or more proactive collection. So we'd assume we would write off less debt as a result of that kind of early engagement, different digital channels to engage people with. Clearly, it'll only be those that opt into it. So it's not like it's going to be the only way we'll be able to contact or manage questions. Phone lines, etc., will still be available to people, and they'll still receive written communication as required. But there'll just be more options available to people as to how they do it. And of course, ultimately, where people don't engage, and where we look to go through legal proceedings, again, all that will be reliant on kind of letters and paperwork and all the traditional stuff you'd expect. It's just an enhancement to what we already do.
Yeah, I just want to note something noted. We keep referring to exploring using AI, looking at using AI, hoping to use AI to make savings. But to me, exploring, looking, and hoping isn't as when it comes back to the hoping to make more money from car parks on the same fees. It's all right hoping for things, but I hope one day I win the lottery. But it probably ain't gonna happen because I don't play it. And I know we are looking at AI, but I don't know that it's actually a sure thing on a lot of these savings that we are going to make. I think 481 grand through using AI to recover debt is a really ambitious number, frankly. I understand it's going to try and make people pay it faster, debt owed, or is there going to be a reduction in people who do go after outstanding debts as well as that, or is it literally just through hoping and exploring using AI?
So the saving is assumed around the debt write-off, so it's assumed the early engagement. We're obviously at the end of January at the moment. We're currently going through the business case and doing some early market engagement with suppliers. So we are hoping that it's going to deliver that outcome, but we are very much mobilised towards it and speaking to those suppliers. So we expect to have that technology in place in time to deliver that level of saving. And without, I don't want to go into the commercials too much, but one of the possible options is effectively gives you a free trial at this type of software, and if you don't recover your costs, you don't have to proceed with it, kind of thing. So we're very much mobilised towards this, rather than kind of hoping in the future, in the summer we might start thinking about it. We're very much mobilised on that, and you'll see, and just one more if I may. You'll see in one of the appendices, Appendix 5, which I don't necessarily want to draw loads of attention to with 45 minutes to go, but there's a breakdown of for main savings worth more than £500,000. There's a delivery milestone set out, which sets out what we expect to achieve between now and the end of March, Q1, Q2, Q3 for the following year, etc., etc.
And on that notice, we'll try to be a bit swifter so we can get through it. We are getting there, Councillor Leary.
On the subject of AI, it would be actually quite handy if we were actually given a rough number of how much of the savings proposed within this budget are to come from AI and technical changes and hopefuls, as opposed to direct cuts, because I think there's a lot of ambition of using AI that isn't guaranteed to deliver results.
It's funny, actually, I was going to come on to the AI question, because actually there's a lot of staff loss being replaced with AI in this, which obviously is natural over the whole world at the moment. And moving on from that, we have the communicate. So there was no disingenuous lines in most of the budget until I found this one, and this annoyed me as what I consider a disingenuous budget line. Communications restructure and investing in supporting the Armed Forces Covenant. Those are two massively different things. Why are they being grouped together? Can we please break down that 115,000 between the two of them?
Yes, so I believe the comms element is 75,000. I'm just making eye contact with a colleague who will nod. Yeah, so £75,000 is comms, and about £40,000 of it is to do with the Armed Forces Covenant.
Thank you. So first off, please don't put budgets that totally separate together again. I think that's very disingenuous, because obviously a comms restructure is very different to the Armed Forces Covenant. They're not really related. I was surprised to see comms as a pressure with the restructure, because it seems like a really simple area to save a lot of money with AI. Most businesses are saving lots of money in comms using AI, and we're doing that almost everywhere else in the whole budget, but not comms, which is really easy. And AI already does that. Can you please explain to me why it's a pressure and not a saving?
Well, comms sort of comes under me. So yeah,
the answer is we are investing in comms. That's a simple answer. Comms is essential for engagement of our residents. For the campaigns we're running, especially fostering, for example, we've increased the number of children in fostering care because we've got more foster carers. That saves us money. To do that, that's part of campaigns and that's part of comms. We are also investing in terms of marketing essentially as well. So comms in the past has been a bit reactive and let's say less than dynamic. We're changing that. Part of our relationship with the customers is to basically promote ourselves and signpost our services and make our services more accessible. So that's what we're doing. That's essentially the answer. We're investing in our comms department.
I'll very briefly say I'm very disappointed you're not investing in a lot of the transport and potholes and all that side and choosing to use AI to help that better, but not comms. And I won't mention the recent comms article about the road in North Dorset with the wrong numbers and days and names on. I think I'll leave that. Sorry, I'm getting cold and grumpy. Yeah, of course you can come back. So I was political.
I wasn't talking about politicals, but part of that funding, I know you pointed out there's money in there, but essentially we're recruiting a new officer. So there's an armed forces officer who basically the rules have changed in terms of our support. And there is more support being provided for the armed services. Part of that is actually recruiting an officer, so it's a salary as well.
Excellent. That's a really good news story. Councillor Leary.
Thank you. Coming back onto that, communications restructure investing in support of the Armed Forces Covenant. Can I ask why are those two things actually lumped together? Because I don't understand. What's the correlation? Did you run out of paper on that and space and you're trying to save on ink and whatnot? I mean, why are they linked together? I don't understand it.
I believe because a position within the comms team is going to be specifically for the Armed Forces Covenant, which is what Councillor Ireland just said, which is why they've gone together. But that doesn't explain why a restructure would be included with it, because they are two very separate things in that. But they want to invest in it and increase it. That's the strategic choice. That is their choice. Any other questions on the corporate development and legal side to things? Leaving obviously the OFC and transformation, because that'll all be totally separate coming to us and will be coming back to us again. Anything else from you, Ben? No. Fantastic. So we can then move on to central budget, summary of movements. Is there anything on here that people wanted to ask about? It is getting towards 8 o'clock, and I think a lot of people are a little bit tired now. We're not getting many questions coming through. Does anyone have any other questions on the rest of the budget and medium-term financial plan and everything we're doing today? Councillor O'Leary.
Are we able to ask questions on the capital programme, please? Is in other councils across the country, capital programmes that don't go so well can come back to bite them and affect budgets effectively. Are we able to ask questions on that?
Technically, at the budget meeting, we do accept both the revenue and the capital budget. So yes, technically it was within scope.
Yes, thank you very much. So in capital programmes, there is climate schemes registered at spending 25, 26, 600 grand, next year 500 grand, year after 306 grand, year after that 591 grand, totaling 2 million. And then there's another line saying new climate schemes, effectively that, 1.1 million, 4.9 million, 6.2 million, 8.8 million, 4 million, 25 million. Can I just have some explanation on what they are, and am I reading that correctly? And also what amount of that is coming from central government and what is coming from us?
So the strategy of choosing to invest it in that isn't up for debate here. But if you're asking what that's going to be used for in terms of is that exposing us to any risk from the capital programme, then I guess that's a question. Yeah, Nick?
I can try and answer some of that. So there's actually a paper coming to Cabinet next week. It was published a couple of days ago, which explains exactly the answer to Councillor O'Leary's questions. But in short, it's actually carrying on the programme that previous administration introduced. So they allocated a large amount of money, and it hasn't all been spent yet. So there's a paper coming to Cabinet
next week, which actually some of the things are above the £500,000 threshold, and it elucidates in that paper what it's going to be spent on. But essentially, we're continuing to spend them based on the previous administration's allocation of capital. Essentially, is the answer, and I don't think it's changed that much. Most of the money we spend is on basically reducing the costs for the council. So, in terms of going back to your previous question about increases in gas and electricity, it would be a hell of a lot more if we didn't have all the solar on our roofs, for example, and the heat pumps we've installed and which we're continuing to roll out. So, yeah, we're spending money on stuff that's going to save us money.
So the detail of that is in the cabinet report. This question needs to be how it's related to, it has to be budget related. We can't just go on a climate change one here.
I want to know where the money's coming from. Is it coming from us or is it coming from central government funding? And the same question for the money we plan to spend on cycle lanes, totaling about £1 million up to 2030. Is that active travel money from central government or is that our own money we're investing?
So the 10 million for climate change is our own money that we're investing in it. The cycle lanes, however, is that our capital or is that government?
I'm not entirely sure exactly which slide we're referring to because there's a number of them, but there is an active travel allocation from Department for Transport, so I suspect it's that one. Okay, external.
So probably national, but actually I would draw a distinction in the fact that it makes no odds. It all comes from the taxpayer. All the money comes from the same place at the end of the day, and that's our pockets and our residents' pockets. So our job is to make sure it's all spent appropriately and well. Any other questions? Yes, Alex, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 90, and this is a question. It's not a criticism, but just intrigued. Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund, which is 3 million this year, but not in future. Is this a one-off purchase, or is this? This is not. It always seems like a fund should be ongoing rather than just like one thing. So just a little bit of elucidation would be useful. Thank you very much. Not that I disagree with it. It's a very good capital programme as far as I can see, even though there's nothing in my ward.
Straight to Shane and Jan, I'm guessing, for that one. Oh no, sorry, go for it.
It's, I believe it's some external funding that we have to support this, but effectively it's to support with one significant acquisition, which would be funded from that, which is scheduled to take place between now and the end of March. Hence why it's all in this financial year.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the overall funding in the budget. At the scrutiny meeting yesterday, I expressed some scepticism whether children and adults would be able to achieve be within their budget in 2026. If you look at the quarter 3 outturn, you see that Place is £5 million underspent. If you were being a little bit cynical, you would wonder whether actually Place was carrying the can for the overspend in other directorates. Looking at 2026, the assurance I'd like to have is there's a lot of very important activity goes on in Place, particularly a lot of activity on highways, which I'm sure is in everybody else's inbox as well as mine. The reassurance I'd like is if children and adults continues to bust its budget, please let's not let Place carry the can for that and have its having glass ceilings put on its expenditure.
I think to be clear that is very much a strategy thing, and I think it's very clear that Place always carries the can and is being cut to its detriment for the others. I think that is fair to say. That's a statement of fact, and it is again in this budget, and that is the way it is. And I'm sure the leader and the cabinet heard you loud and clear about not doing it next year. Nick, would you like to respond to that?
Hand over to Simon, but you essentially it's a consequence of national funding. So 70% of our budget is social care in some form, adults or children, and most of it is demand led. We are well aware that we are underfunded both nationally and as a result of our reality for adult social care. We're underfunded for children in terms of SEND. As Councillor Sutton said yesterday, I think she gave a figure about 4,000 less per child in terms of SEND than when we receive from the average. I think we've received 13,000, the average is about 17,000. So those sort of pressures are demand-led, and in the end, a lot of them are statutory and we have to pay them. And what carries the can in the end is the stuff that is non-statutory, which is including lots of stuff in place, unfortunately. So I'll hand over to Simon.
No, you've answered it. That's fine. I think that very much is the case. Councillor said we always knew this is the way it works. There is a lot of not statutory stuff in place, and places also demand led. But at the end of the day, how the budgets are set and where they go is a political decision by the cabinet, the administration, and that's within their gift, not something for us to scrutinise here on how balanced the budget is. I think that's probably fair to say. Anyone else have any questions on the budget or the papers in front of us, or can we draw this to a recommendation? Excellent. So the only real recommendation that got out of it, because we basically asked to see, is this balanced? The only question we had coming out of it is a request that they need to reduce the car parking income expected and predicted to make sure it is feasible, and that will probably reduce something else elsewhere. But even the director isn't like, yes, we're going to make this. This is within our goal. So that's the only recommendation. Everyone happy with that? Otherwise, we sign it off to go to cabinet. Carry it. Go for it.
Sorry, Jan didn't explicitly say he wasn't happy. Okay? He said it was a risk. Yeah.
You are right. And when I explicitly asked him yes or no, he evaded the question rather than saying yes, which means that we all know he is unhappy. He's not allowed to say he's unhappy, and it wouldn't be professional to say he's unhappy. However, I think our job is to make sure we have a balanced budget. And in my view, unless everyone has complete faith in the budget, then actually I think we need to make sure it's balanced. And I'll take it to a vote if we want to, or are we all happy to go with that as a recommendation? Anyone want to make it a vote? No, cool. So that goes through as the recommendation. Otherwise, we sign off going forward, specifying that we only scrutinise the place-based stuff. Excellent. So now we can move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee work programme. Do we want to discuss and look at this work programme now, or are we happy to leave that as a developing subject and move on to the next item? Fantastic. Executive arrangement forward plans. Again, it's all tabled. Everybody happy with that? Brilliant. Urgent items. There are no urgent items. Exempt business. There is no exempt business. Everyone, please travel home safely. Thank you for getting through that. Easier than we thought.